Hey everybody, welcome to lesson number 4, factoring. Very important lesson, so important in fact that we're going to see it again later. Why is it so important? Well, in order to do any other advanced math courses such as pre-calculus or calculus, physics included, we need to be able to factor. Okay? When we factor, we're going to be talking about mostly quadratics. You see here a quadratic term. Your quadratic term here is your x squared, a linear term ax plus some sort of constant. Now, those particular variables a and c are very important, which is why I have arrows pointing at them. Okay, when we factor, we're going to be looking for two terms that will multiply to whatever your c term happens to be, sign included, and those same numbers should add to your a term, which we have to keep in mind the sign there as well, because when we add, we want to make sure that the result of that addition is either positive or negative according to the sign that we want. Now, sometimes this is a little bit of guess and check, like you have to think about what could possibly work to multiply and then check to see if they add properly. This is not an easy thing. This takes a lot of practice. There are people who have been doing this for a couple of years that still aren't that good at it. You need to practice it. The more you practice, the better you'll be. So, although I just kind of made it sound a little nerve-wracking, you have to practice it if you want to be successful. Okay? So, let's check it out. If your A and your C term both happen to be positive in this expression here, then we know that both of our values that we choose to multiply and then add will have to be positive. If your A term is negative, but your C term is positive, then that means that both values are going to be negative factors. And then finally, if we have, doesn't really matter what A is, it could be either positive or negative, but our C term is negative, one of our terms is positive, one will have to be negative to make that last term negative with multiplication, but the larger value will take the sign of A. Right? So if it's negative A, then we want the larger value to be negative. If it's positive A, the larger value should be positive. So I have a bunch of examples that we're going to look at. Okay, I believe I set these up in order of how I have them listed out here. I did. Yes, I did. Perfect. Okay, so let's check the first one, right? I have a positive A and a positive C. So I need two terms that multiply to 21 that will add to 10. Now I'm lucky because there's only really a couple of numbers that will multiply to 21. 1 and 21, but those add to 22, so that doesn't work. The other numbers I could multiply to make 21 would be 3 and 7. Okay, 3 times 7 is 21, 3 plus 7 is 10, so that worked out perfectly. And because both A and C terms here, A and C, are positive, both of these values have to be positive. And that is our factored form. So I would like for you to try this one right here. If you need to pause the video to write and try it, do so now. Alright, let's check out what your answer is. Alright, real quick, our setup. We need two numbers that multiply to 12, right? 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Those are all the options that multiply to 12. And because we have two positive numbers, we know that these will be positives. So let's try some of those combos, right? 1 and 2 add to 13, too much. 2 and 6 add to 8, also too much. 3 and 4, those add to 7. So those are the numbers that we want. Let's try our second example. Here we see a negative A value, but a positive C. Because our C value is positive, we know that both terms have to either be both positive or both negative, right? Because negative times negative becomes positive. However, our A term here is negative, so we need to make sure that when we add, we keep A as negative. That's why we wrote down this second option here, right? So I know it's going to be x minus and x minus. I got to think about factors of 35, right? Numbers that multiply to 35. How about 5 and 7? 5 and 7 multiply to 35, and 5 and 7 is 12, and those negatives keep A and C with the correct signs. So why don't you try out this one right here. Pause the video and resume it when you're ready to check. Okay, so we know we're going to have two negative solutions here, right? Two negative factors, because C is positive and A is negative. Two numbers that multiply to 6 would be 2 and 3, and negative 2 and negative 3 add to negative 5. So that worked. Hopefully you got that same solution. Finally, I'm going to do these two down here first, and then I'll let you do these two together after. Okay, I'm going to scroll up just a little bit more. This example, or these two examples, follow this last option. A here is negative, and C is also negative. But that's the important part, is the negative C. Because we have a negative C, when we write out our factors, we're going to have one positive, and we're going to have one negative. That's to give us a negative value when we multiply. But we also need to make sure that the two numbers, when we add them, they have to add to a negative number, which would mean that the larger of those two numbers that we're adding would have to be with that sign, the negative sign. So let's think of numbers that multiply to 10. How about like 1 and 10? Well, if I do negative 10 and positive 1, that adds to negative 9. So that didn't quite give us the number that we wanted, but it kept the larger number negative. Why don't we do 5 and 2? Right? 5 is the larger, 2 is the smaller. When I multiply these, it gives me negative 10, and when I add positive 2 and negative 5, it gives me negative 3. So that worked. The last one down here, and then you'll try these ones out. Right? Again, I see a negative C value, so I know I have to have a positive and I have to have a negative. Thinking of numbers that multiply to 12. 6 and 2, I want the larger one to be positive. 6 minus 2 is 4, so that didn't quite work. How about 4 and 3? Right? I know 4 has to be the larger, has to be positive, right? The larger one. Making 3 negative, let's try that out. Positive 4 minus 3 is positive 1, and that multiplied to negative 12 the way we wanted it to. Okay, so you have 2 right here to try on your own. Pause the video and resume when you're ready to check both. Alright, I know we're going to have x plus, x minus, thanks to this negative C. The larger of the two values should be negative. I'm thinking negative 9 and positive 5, right? That multiplies to negative 45 and adds to negative 4. Finally, again, we're going to have one of each, positive and negative, but the larger this time should be positive. Two numbers that multiply to 16, how about 8 and 2? That makes 16, and when we add 8 and negative 2, we get positive 6. Now, that's really it for this lesson. I don't think I have any more examples. I don't. Just keep on practicing it. This was really short, direct. We're going to have more practice in this later on this year, so if you're a little bit nervous, just don't worry about it. Just practice it. Keep trying. Okay? See you at the next lesson.